Rayner throws it on the boot inside 50. Hipwood's got a run and a jump.
Danaher's had a look from roughly this angle. That's better. He's absolutely nailed that. So this is 4 first quarter goals for the Brisbane Lions.
Goes with a long kick. Oh, what a superb mark by Leicester. He was almost levitating Leicester, side on, pulling it in. Around the body. Diving mark not taken by May, and Lohman dribbles it home. McCluggage through the traffic, a dribbling kick. A soccer, a follow-up. It was like the penalty shot that the key. Billings to spoil. Oliver, Hepper stolen, picked his pockets and put it through. Cameron
marks. He wants to take Lever on a foot race. He turned around. He saw it was Jake. He said, I'm having a couple of bounces on you.
The Brisbane Lions fancast, we are back after one of the great wins. This time last week we sat there after a 70-point drubbing of North Melbourne, and we all sat there and said, yeah, and do it again. Go on, do it again. And they did it again. One of the all-timers for Brisbane Lions fans, not just because it was Melbourne, who we've created a pretty decent rivalry with over the last few years, but it was at the MCG, and most importantly, it was, with an asterisk, a 4-quarter performance. How good?
We talked a little bit off there about it being a 4-quarter performance in the sense that we eliminated the necessity for the 4th quarter. So we could have just gone home at 3-quarter time and I think everyone would have been happy. But yeah, wonderful win for the team, and to do it there and to do it against Melbourne. Particularly, I don't know if you heard Max Gawn being interviewed the week before saying like, oh, you know, our big rival's Brisbane. So take that.
Yeah, that's good. That's what you want. I was having a bit of a discourse with someone during the game on Twitter.
I love that. You're just having a nice old discourse on Twitter.
Yes.
You are really taking certain liberties with your vernacular there, Mr. JB.
A fella called Ross, who was pretty much trying to tell me that it was all done and dusted. And I was very much in the camp of, I'm not saying anything until that siren goes. Just years of conditioning, and especially this season when we've coughed up leads. It started with him saying, easily the best game for a long time, intensity excellent. I said to him, can I point out that since you posted this, Melbourne has kicked 2 goals? And he said, all right, well, Charlie's just kicked another one. Can we talk about it yet? And I said, no chance, not over till it's over. And then obviously Melbourne kicked another couple of goals. So, yeah, that last quarter, albeit a little bit disappointing, but the damage was done and we put the cue in the rack at that stage. But, I mean, no changes as we sort of forecast last week for the team. And we didn't even need to activate the sub, as things were going so well. The only noticeable difference was we got that game from Cam Rayner we've all been sort of hoping for however long, where he spent the majority of the time in the midfield and tore it apart.
Yeah, particularly in that first quarter, I think they sort of just... I mean, wasn't the start of the game pretty funny, where it was like, 8 or 9 or 10 consecutive stoppages of just like up the wing and blocking it up, and
I don't know.
Kind of funnily enough,
I don't know if funny is the right word.
Yeah, well, I found it funny. You know, whether it's entertaining or whether it's interesting, I kind of tend to fall in the interesting camp. So, yeah, but it was weird because I kind of bet they probably didn't want that necessarily to happen, given what they were trying to do. And, you know, we've all seen it now in terms of bringing the winger into Petrarca on stoppage and kind of just creating a bit of a mismatch and stuff like that. But like, it really showed exactly what we were doing immediately, and we stuck with it, and it worked, you know, really well. So yeah, I mean, like, it was a pretty, yeah, I found it pretty interesting in terms of a tactical arm wrestle, and yeah, they just couldn't kind of live with it in the end. I think Melbourne have like beaten some pretty shit teams and lost against some pretty all right teams, and their record is kind of not as good as it should be.
Yeah, well, they lost
the other way around. Their record is better than it should be.
They lost Sydney in opening round, of course, at SCG. Since then, they have beaten Bulldogs, Hawthorn, Adelaide, and Port, which is probably their better win. But by all metrics, Port Adelaide probably should have got away with that win. And, you know, you can hear the excuses coming from the Melbourne camp, 3 games in 13 days and all that sort of stuff. But, you know, we had a
We
day...
had 3 games in 14 days.
Yeah, we had a day less preparation with, you know, a flight from Adelaide back to Brisbane down to Melbourne as well to consider. So I'm not copying that one from Melbourne as well. The most important thing... I mean, there's a couple of things that really made this win extra impressive is that, you know, we have been monstered by their midfield in the past. Obviously, Clayton Oliver is just not himself at the moment and has since gone in for surgery on that hand. But Petrarca has torn us a new one. Jack Viney seems to always get up when he plays Brisbane and, you know, excels generally when we play them.
I have a question about Jack Viney.
Yeah.
His jawline is enormous.
And
read between the lines in terms of what I'm saying there. But and his shoulders and arms look enormous comparative to where they may have been in previous years. He looks like a typical like human growth hormone dude. Like his jawline is enormous. I've decided to just take the gloves off.
Yeah.
You know, having previously worked in gyms and stuff and seeing people whose jawlines drastically change, but I don't know. I just was like, man, I don't remember him being that massive all of the time. So
he's always been like really solid, and I mean, I really respect the way that he plays his footy, especially when he plays it against us. I mean, as annoying as it is, but to keep their midfield basically silent and to have their at the 3/4 time, Bailey Fritsch 2 touches, Ben Brown 1 touch, Harrison Petty no touches. Obviously, all fantastic stats to have. But the tackling pressure, like the pressure was probably the most important thing and most impressive thing for us. You know, I spoke about it after the Collingwood game, how we were down 30 by the end of it. Well, roles reversed. 80 plus tackles in this match, and that was where the game was basically won from the start.
We gave him no room to think. There were a couple of little... Yeah, the tactical thing of the wingman, whether it was Fletcher or Berry coming in on Petrarca. And then also just, you know, David King's been a bit of a broken record about it, but unfortunately it's one of the instances where he's right, where, you know, holding one of the forwards deep and allowing Charlie Cameron to kind of come to the ball and to split up Lever and May was, like, really important. So he kind of touched on a lot of those, like, tactical things. And I think he's right in terms of it was a really good coaching performance by Fagan, and he doesn't get enough credit when that happens, because when it does, people will tend to look at, you know, the whole coaching staff, and it's like, yep, but also the whole coaching staff do pick the team. So, you know, you live and die by the coach, and I think he deserves a bit of praise this week more than a lot of other weeks.
Yeah, 100%.
Almost all of them. So, you know.
Yeah.
And Cam Rayner absolutely broke the game apart. So I was reading a thread about, like, you know, what do we all think about the Darcy Gardner experience now? And I sort of said, if it's going to allow Rayner to do that every other week or every third week, hopefully we can go from every third week to every other week. That's good enough for me. And that's what I've been kind of had stuck to in the preseason and at the beginning of the year, that this was going to happen. We all knew it was possibly going to happen. It just needed to, like, actually happen, and it did. So I do think at some point I'd like to see Logan Morris get a chance over Dizzy, but I think that absolutely this is worthwhile.
Yeah, 100%. And we've got a couple of questions that we will get to that sort of covers basically everything you've just mentioned there. We'll have a bit of a deeper dive later on in the show. We also spoke last week about our ball movement against Melbourne and how we saw how it worked if we were patient enough, taking short kicks, the kick mark game, waiting for the opportunities to open up, and that's how we got them. Well, not how we got them, but how we played our best footy against them at the MCG last year. And then we saw Hawthorn do it, well, try to do it a couple of weeks ago, but didn't necessarily know how to execute and jump on those opportunities when they popped up. And it ended up with them just taking an unprecedented amount of uncontested marks, whereas we found the balance very, very well, and were able to execute. And still our efficiency inside 50 wasn't the greatest, especially in that second quarter. It did bounce out a little bit, but we did it well enough, obviously.
there's probably an element of they still have good defenders, so it's always going to be the case. Like, and if you look at the, they were ahead in contested mark, which you can assume would probably be the bulk coming from the two blokes at the back, and just whether it's people not sort of taking their time or not, picking the right pass or going long when they need not to, they need to lower the eyes. Like, it's really hard. Like, it's hard to envisage what a perfect performance would be, anything more than what this was against like a good team in Melbourne, like a good seasoned team at home. It's kind of like, well, what more can you really expect? So.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, it would have been like, it felt like a 50-60 point win, and it would have been nice.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. In the fourth quarter, I was like pretty ticked off.
Yeah, it would have been nice to get that.
I'm glad we had 4 days before we did this, because I would have been like, that fourth quarter.
Yeah.
And I would have been that guy. But at the same time, I love brutalizing teams that I don't like. And if you've listened to the Brisbane Lions fancast enough, you will know that I don't like 99% of the teams in the AFL. And the 1% is like a fleeting flavour of the month.
Yep.
So I want, a bit like that game against Richmond last year where we absolutely tore them apart. And I was just like, yep, don't stop. They're not already dead. We've seen what they can do over the past 5 years. Just keep going. But I think everyone knew what was happening at three-quarter time. The game had come to almost a standstill, and who cares? They kicked the last 4 goals. Will that give them any actual hope? Who cares? They got absolutely destroyed.
Yeah, and I agree. It just would have been nice for the scoreboard to reflect what we all felt, but beggars can't be choosers, I suppose, in that respect. One thing I was a little bit, not disappointed by, but surprised, and it was sort of flagged at the start of the game by media as well as what we spoke about in the show last week, is that Darcy Gardner didn't immediately go to a Jake Lever or to a Stephen May. He was matched up on Tom McDonald for a majority of the game, and Tom McDonald had himself a good game, actually. So we didn't use him as that defensive disruptor type on the known interceptors in May and Lever, and it would have, they both had decent games. They weren't as influential as they have been, but I think that Melbourne defence did basically everything that they possibly could under the circumstances. But it was really encouraging for the first quarter that our goals came from both our key forwards, albeit from a very, very cheap 50-metre penalty to Joey Danaher. That got him one at the top of the square, but, you'll take it.
Yeah, it was there, I just think that May didn't think that he'd marked it, but he had, and, May's done enough peanut things in his career, so he can wear one. It kind of brought a bit of fear in for them, I think, because largely they didn't do anything for the rest of the game, and they didn't need to. Our keys. Hitwood was virtually kind of anonymous in the second half, so that's great. But yeah, definitely an element of they got on the board early, they kind of created that uncertainty, and then, slightly put the two of them off their game. May and Lever are always going to get marks, and I've talked about that before, but largely it was a really good start, and the right people were kind of looking ominous. So that's sort of all you can really ask for a first quarter out of you two big men. So, but yeah, I do agree. Darcy Gardner not going and being the kind of disruptor immediately was a bit I think a lot of people would have been expecting that, but at the same time, we've seen Hipwood and Danaher match up relatively well against the two premier defenders in the competition. So I guess it was an element of not fixing something that wasn't broken. So
yeah, I suppose you're right there as well.
And Tom McDonald purely could have been an X factor, because I don't know, wasn't he playing on the wing 3 years ago?
And he's been shuffled around basically everywhere on the field at this point. While Melbourne,
yeah, because he could have had a big impact if time wasn't put into him.
Yeah,
and that's a case in point example of, I'll say it again, the game dictating the necessity for 3 talls, not Fagan's fetish. So, that's one where if Tom McDonald had come and taken a bunch of intercepts, or they'd passed off or whatever, if it was a smaller bloke playing as a pseudo tall, could have been in a bit of trouble. So, perfect example of what I've been prattling on about for weeks, about it being the modern game dictating, not Fagan's decisions. So, yeah.
Lovely. I was a bit harsh on Kai Loman at halftime. I thought he was fairly anonymous, and I think I put that down to the fact that he obviously had a great game last week against North, especially his first half. So to see him not necessarily replicate it was a bit disappointing. But his second half, especially his third quarter, was great. And that goal that he kicked, I'm sure he went through every decision in his mind in the sort of 3 seconds leading up to when he sort of went the dribble kick under the jumping defender. Like, he could have easily botched that, kicked it straight into him, shanked it somehow, overthought it, but the way he executed that was really well done in the end.
It was smart. It really was, because he wanted to give hands over the top, but there was another guy coming in from the side. So he realised pretty quickly that he couldn't do that. And, yeah, it was like, funnily enough, Lynchy coming back into it a couple of times. Shades of Alistair Lynch just with that kick on the goal line, just like dropping it 1 metre out. Obviously, he wasn't commentating, so nothing for me to be mad about this week about Lynchy. But no, that was a clever goal, and I'm surprised you don't see more of that kind of a thing.
Yep.
Another sneaky, I don't get super enthused, but when McCluggage followed up on that one in the goal square and just like smashed it through off the ground, I was pretty hyped for that. So that was a good moment.
Yeah, it really was.
Loman, his tackles were up, and like, you know, I think it was just a matter of a bit of an adjustment, because he probably wouldn't have played on too many defenses that were as good as the Melbourne ones, and you know, particularly guys like, you know, Judd McVie and whatever, and like whoever the hell's in there, like they're a good unit, and to go from, as you said, playing on an almost VFL level defense to playing on, you know, one of the touted best defenses, he grew into the game, and I think it'd be like excellent learning for him. I'm a fan now.
Yeah, we've done a quick turnaround in a couple of weeks. No, 100%, and especially if Charlie ends up missing this week against Geelong, then his responsibility, his workload is only going to increase. So we might need to do some shuffling around there and see what we can do. But yeah, I mean, just a great performance. Just a great performance from start to basically finish. What did you make of Zorko's game? Because I know most people have really rated these last few weeks. You have too, but sort of picked a few little holes. I thought he was much better on the Thursday night as well. His kicking efficiency for a good period of time he was kicking at 100% as well. So between him and Motti, they've been able to sort of plug that hole, you know, as well as we could have hoped. McKenna will hopefully come back this week, if not next week, which I guess adds another sort of question, but I think those two have done reasonably well under the circumstances.
No, I thought Zorko was a lot better.
Yeah.
I really wish you could get stats like up to 3/4 time, just to sort of like see what the actual game were, you know, a bit like the blackout one last year where it was like, oh, well, we destroyed them for all but the last 10 minutes. But yeah, I was definitely a lot. There wasn't as much defensive culpability this week from Zorko, if at all.
Well, it amazed me how easily we bounced it out of our D50. Like they just had, they didn't lock it in at all. We got it out so easily.
I think they just got absolutely torn a new one, and good, because I don't know, like they just seemed like they weren't playing the right game, or like they'd completely given all level of like priority to us, and gave us license to dictate. But you can really go down the list, and you're hard pressed to find someone that didn't contribute, and like. At the same time, there are people that quote unquote didn't contribute that contributed. So, like, but for example, like I'd say like Dunkley played his best game of the season. Lester played his best game of the season. Jared Berry was really good for the third week in a row.
Yep.
So worth noting that he strung together 3 really good games.
Yep.
Like really good games. And I really want to stress that because, yeah, you called me Berry lover in the Discord.
No, I called you a Berry apologist, and here you are doing it
again.
again.
Berry apologist. Well, whatever. I don't need to apologize because he had 3 games that are like you would get him in on the wing on virtually any team if he's doing that role every week. So, Fuck everybody. He's a good player when he's given something to do. So
100%. He just wasn't good when he was given a behind the ball role to do.
no, absolutely not. But I think unfortunately, I think these are the games that he had a lot of them last year that people have no memory of.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like, whilst the morons like me are sitting here going, yeah, well, he was good against Clayton Oliver in the semi-final of 10 years ago. It's like, it's because it's really hard to remember these like solid, high efficiency, high tackle, relatively high disposal and high meters gained games where it's like he's actually had 3 of them in a row.
Yep.
So it's pretty good, particularly given we played terribly in the, second half and second of the first games. So all good. McCluggage was good. A couple of goals and was, in sort of everything that was more or less happening. So sign those 2 up. Smart.
Well, we'll get to that later on. But speaking of, I touched on the cheap 50 metre to Danaher. What did you make of Hugh McCluggage's first goal and the way he earned that one, where he maybe got clipped in the head and it took him 2 seconds to react to it and the umpire fell for it?
Yeah, he got hit. He had a big red mark on his forehead.
It's just
all there.
Strange that it took him so long to make note of it.
Yeah, but are you operating on replay time or on real time?
Both. I'm just saying for both that and the Danaher, if they weren't called, I wouldn't be unhappy. I thought we got the rub of the green with those 2, and they both
for sure.
led to
But
goals.
we've had some terrible runs of the green, so I'm willing to take it when we've got it. But,
I'm not saying I'm not going to take it.
If that was given the other way around, I'd probably be like, "No, Zorko's been an idiot."
Yep.
Both of them, because he would have given away both of them. But yeah, I see what you mean. But it's there. It's there as much as a lot of other free kicks that are given for high contact in the marking contest, which is just 2 people trying to mark the ball and someone gets a tricep in the head, and you're like, bro, he's trying to mark the ball. Like, a guy's head's there. It's physics. So, okay, I don't mind it. And he had a big little red mark on his little forehead, so all good.
Well, that's it. All right. Well, let's just jump into that quick, I guess, contract talk. Obviously, Hugh still not signed. Berry, his name is being thrown up now as well, and Link McCarthy's not entered contract talks until the end of the year as well. So Greg Swan has come out and said we've got the salary cap to fit them all, which is strange because I thought we were quite squeezed. But those are 3 names you probably want to keep on your list if you can.
Yeah, well, I think there's people that wouldn't have wanted to keep one of them on the list.
Yeah, for sure.
But I definitely would, because I think there's a lot more upside than not. But yeah, look, what we say when we get to the back end of the buy. Like, I don't know, it's weird if you think about what teams could utilize like McCluggage, and if he wants to play more inside on ball. What other teams are in any kind of a window that would facilitate that happening? And the only one I can really think about is Collingwood. And the idea of him playing for Collingwood fucking sickens me.
Well, apparently the Saints are offering him 1.3 over however many years.
Yeah, but have fun not doing anything for St Kilda. Like, they play the most terrible. Like, I was talking about Ross Lyon, because I've talked about this before, and I'm like, why is Ross Lyon seen as such a good coach? He's not won a grand final. He's been to grand finals, and he's lost them. And it's like, is Fagan going to be talked about with the amount of reverence as Ross Lyon? Probably not. But they've achieved the same thing virtually. And it's like, the only time Ross Lyon's ever played entertaining football or had like big scores is when he's had Pavlich or Rewald absolutely bailing him out by kicking 1 billion goals and making his team look far better than it is in terms of his like whole structured approach. So if McCluggage wants to go there, I'm sorry, you're not going to have a great time. You're going to be running one way, and it's not the way towards the goal.
Well, hopefully that's enough to get him to stick around. It's just, yeah, I would have thought we would have received news by now that Hugh had signed on, but I guess he's driving his price up every week with performances like that.
Possibly. I mean, a lot of these things do happen in the shadows and stuff, and it's a timely process these days rather than it just being like, it's done. And I mean, how many times have we just seen like on like a Wednesday, it'll be like, Cal Archie re-signs, and you're like, didn't even realize what was going on.
Yep.
So, yeah, I hope that they stick around, because I think that there's not necessarily a better club to be in this position. St Kilda, I think.
Maybe Hawthorn.
Yeah, maybe, but their midfield's pretty stacked too between Newcomb, Warple's playing better footy now-ish. Sam Day or Will Day, I can't remember which arbitrary first name it is that he's got. They're all in there, but also you're looking at it being like a pretty long time for Hawthorn. And do you really want to have a career like Alex Witherden where you spend time in a bottoming team, spend one season in the finals and then go back to a bottoming team? I was thinking that yesterday when they won. I'm like, I wonder how many games that dude has actually won.
I feel sorry for him. But originally,
I know you do.
Yeah, well, I did, and when I realised we had to squeeze him out to sign Cam Rayner and Hugh McCluggage back then, I didn't feel that sorry for him.
Yeah, well, he's one of those rare few that have gotten to NAB Rising Star nominations.
Yep.
Did you notice how naturally that rolled off the tongue that time? Not the NAB Rising Sun, as I called it last. Brilliant. Brilliant. Yeah, sign them up. Get them going. There's plenty to be done with this list, and I think that we're looking pretty sharp. I think, I said last week it'd be fine. It's fine.
Yeah, obviously, still our next fortnight's going to be very, very tough. We're coming up against the 2 undefeated teams, so more work to be done. So it's not a case of and do it again. It's more like more of that. We're going to need more of that. I think we're going to need to go to another level again, and it would be bloody good to see a win at the Gabba this year. We haven't seen that yet.
Yeah.
Which is strange.
Maybe it's all you guys after all. The bad luck and the whole the Olympics thing and the stadium and the ambience. It's all that.
Maybe.
Shall we do some votes, sir?
We shall. Hop on Brewery Tours, bring you the votes each and every week. Hop on brewerytours.com.au. Book yourself a half a full day tour in Brisbane or the Gold Coast. You can even sort of do these tours that they might take you to lumber punks as well and throw some axes before you get stuck into some beeros, which is a bit of fun. It's a great little Bucks party type event if that's the sort of thing you're looking for, or corporate team building, any of that sort of stuff. Hop on brewerytours.com.au. Tell them we sent you, hey? All right, votes for me.
Just get a big picture of me on the target of the axe throwing thing, and you're good. But you will need to sign up to our Patreon for that because you will not be getting my face anywhere.
That's true. Rayner for me, the 3, and that very could have easily been and the other 2 that I'm about to mention. And there's going to be some players that played great games that miss out. So Rayner the 3, Frog the 2, and Dunks the 1 for me.
Very good. Very good. Same 3, different order. I've gone Dunkley 3, Rayner 2, and Froggy 1.
Yeah, I could have had those in any sort of order. I just thought that's the game we've been waiting for Rayner, so he deserves the credit. Frog, just love him. And Dunks, I think I had him at 3 to begin with for the role that he played. So, yeah, you chuck those 3 in any order, and then the honourable mentions
There were also
list.
there were other players, yeah. There were so many others that was just they were also pretty good too. But I think you're looking at the amount of output that Cam had over whilst over the whole game, his first quarter really broke it apart and gave them cause for concern. Dunkley was pretty consistent over the course of the game. Froggy was really the hashtag barometer for the defensive pressure.
Yep.
Little bit of gimmick infringement on Matho there, but here we are. So as far as output, and there were other people that lifted. I thought McCluggage was really good for his level of disposals. We didn't talk about Neil, but he kind of was just basically just there.
That's what we expect from Chucky Neal at this point and I guess that's the difference between Lockie's game, which was obviously great, and Rayner's game, is that we expect that from Lockie and we get that from Lockie often enough, whereas we hope that for Cam, and we haven't necessarily got it often enough. And we finally got it. Let's see it again and again and again, please. If we can get that every 3 weeks, like you said, or every other week, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Beautiful stuff. How are we? Have you got your calculator there? How are we going in the
No,
fictional or real?
we'll do a bit of an update in a couple of weeks' time as we go towards the
Is
second bye, perhaps.
Patrick Cripps is equal fourth or some shit.
But it'd be pretty tight as well. I think Zorko has. I mean, for me, he's featured fairly heavily.
Yeah, I was thinking if Zorko's up there, it's purely on your votes.
Yeah. Moddy's obviously got himself a few votes as well. Yeah. So, all right. Let's get into some questions for Crisp Communications, who, don't forget, they've got you some free Brisbane Lions Fancast stickers. They are sending those out as we speak. If you want to get your hands on one of those, brisbanelionsfancast.com.au. And obviously the head of marketing there, Monty, does his little predictions every week as well. He got this one wrong, thankfully. He tipped the D's, little Magic Monty. But glad he got that one wrong. To be fair, I also
You also
tipped the D's.
tipped it. Man, you guys suck, eh?
My tips are cooked this week.
Good. They deserve to be, because that is some poor play. I've said it before, I never tip against my team.
Yeah, well, you know me.
And I don't tip, so, I guess it's kind of like if a tree falls in the wood type thing, but like...
If a tree tips in the wood.
Oh my God. Yeah. But yeah, as we're doing questions, I'm just doing something here, which, it's so bright. I have an idea, a theory for AFL footy.
Okay.
This is a bit of a live mess, but that's okay.
All right. Well, while you do that, I'll hit you with the first question that's come from Chris, who slid into our DMs on Instagram. He said, "Hey guys, was wrapped to get the win at the G against Melbourne and looked like a lot of players brought great pressure around the ball." Correct, they did. I agree. Wanted to get your thoughts on Gardner's role in the team. I was at the game and seen him make a lot of errors and takes a long time to make decisions when he does get the ball.
We'll wait and see.
Yeah.
Still, because I think, yeah. I've said it in the subreddit. I'm like, if Rayner's playing forward to centre, then he's not having that game, and then we're stuck with like Jared Lyons playing in midfield, who's not going to be bursting from stoppage anytime soon. Dev Rob, maybe it's the sort of thing where like Ashcroft comes back and then it gets a bit of a reshuffle because he's got a bit more burst. But then I don't think it's the sort of post ACL that you're looking at someone being fully confident to burst from stoppage the way that and Ashcroft doesn't really burst from stoppages. He kind of like ghosts out of them in this kind of like weird way.
Yep.
It's a bit more like pretty rather than just like brutal. So,
more like your Sam Walsh type.
Yeah, I guess.
Early Sam Walsh, probably, yeah. I agree that he's prone to errors and he often looks pretty indecisive when he's got the ball in hand. But, yeah, I'm with you. Sort of give it time. He is learning a new role, and if it's facilitating Cam Rayner to do what he did on Thursday night, then I'm here for it for sure.
I think there'd probably be an element as well if he's being coached quite hard. Gardner, in terms of what he's doing and what his role probably is. Because, a lot of people are just like, oh, you're playing forward, it's easy. You just like hang out up top and like get marks and stuff. But I'm sure they're being coached to do things like spread Lever and May. You can't have him sitting in between of them. He's like in between them. He has to be also making space and trying to take the third away from that. And he could just be learning his stuff, and then when it comes to the back half of the season, pull the trigger and he starts playing on the interceptors. Is he going to go to Tom Stewart next week? Probably. Maybe. We've had Link McCarthy do that in the past.
Yep.
I guess it'll be interesting. Fortunately, Sam Taylor's possibly not going to be there in a couple of weeks' time. So I think this week coming up against Geelong will really show what his role is going to be, I feel.
Yeah, 100%. Matt on Insta, if Charlie's suspension stands, do they bring in Logan Morris or reshuffle Kai deeper and give Tunstall a full game? I don't necessarily know that Logan Morris is a like for Charlie, and that leaves our forward line fairly tall. I would say, yeah, that Kai and Link McCarthy's sort of responsibility and output sort of expectation goes up a little bit more in those two. And maybe they do bring in someone like a Dev Rob to play a high half forward, or yeah, it's a tough one.
We'll probably get to changes, but I'd be looking at just like pushing Bailey up inside the forward 50 because his transition work is not very good at this point in his career.
And one thing I did say on Twitter as well is that he's just, and I've said it on the show, he's just constantly looking for that don't argue, and he's looking.
Yeah, he's been much maligned for that, and I can't remember if I said it last week, but it's like if you kick 2 nearly goal of the years in a grand final, and that's like. If this is priming him to do it on that stage, I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
That said, you'd rather not. You'd rather the time and the place. But I think he's probably one. And it is funny because we've talked about this last year, and we've talked about it with McCluggage last year and Berry this year. And it's like simplify these guys' games.
Yeah.
It's like it's pretty clear that like the footy IQ is not quite as high as it is on some people. And like I'm all for building versatility, but. As we've said, or as I've said, like versatility isn't a uniform thing. So stick him in the forward 50 and be like, dude, just kick the ball through the sticks this game and see how you go. And I think the last time that they really wanted him to just do that, he kicked like 12 goals against the Gold Coast and then didn't do much else for the rest of the season. That was like 2 years ago.
Yep.
So simplify his game, please.
No, I agree with that. Hazard, the chant leader, also on Instagram. Where do you sit at Gabba games? Well, I'm in 4-2-2.
Centre wing, baby, for you.
So if anyone ever wants to come and say g'day, I'm at 4-2-2. I'll be ideally at 95% of the Gabba games. I might have to miss one here and there for family commitments or whatnot, but no, I'll definitely be there as many games as I can. That's sort of not applicable to you. Miller time.
No, well, I mean, like where I used to sit, the sections have changed.
Yep.
So I think it used to be like section 73, and now it's like they're like got 3 numbers. So I'm like, well, I don't know.
You might be sort
of
no idea. 4-2-5, maybe.
Sounds like the bus I used to catch. That was a 4-5-4.
On Twitter, Miller time. Why was the commentary 98% the Demons are playing bad and only 2% Lions are playing good? Well, I think we all know the answer to that, don't we?
Well, the actual answer to that is the fact that I was working, so I had to watch on a slight delay, and I couldn't sync up SEN, so it was annoying. What I will give credit, and my relationship with BT has kind of... There was element of he had some charm for a while, and I think he's a far better commentator for Triple M. He does know a fair amount of obscure and weird stuff about Brisbane.
He does.
I'll give him that, and about players and stuff like that. And he doesn't get names wrong. Like, he's one of the very few commentators that will call Noah Answorth, not Ainsworth.
Yeah.
And, just little things he'll say that you're like, yeah, you're right. Good stuff, dude. Like,
I will admit it was quite funny in the start of the last quarter. Melbourne kicked a goal. I think it was that Ben Brown goal where Brandon Starcevich was just getting completely front unblocked by Petty. Neither here nor there. Anyway, and BT starts going on his infamous, all right, time to sort of talk about Melbourne mounting a comeback here. And like as he was mid-sentence, Link McCarthy dished out the handball to Zach Bailey, who put the goal through. So in real time, BT had to sort of backtrack on what he was saying. It's just sort of like, yeah, okay, never mind.
Yeah, I find James Brayshaw to be more grating than BT, but I don't think we had Brayshaw. But yeah, it's a shame. Like, that was the only pitfall of having to work and then coming home being like, the footy's on, but I'm a couple of minutes, like, an annoying amount delayed.
Yeah.
So I could never quite catch up and hear the dulcet tones of probably Jared Waitley and Kane Corns or something weird. What an unholy alliance that would be. Probably Howie. I don't know. But yeah, the commentary, we all know that there's an agenda. Everyone knows it. Whatever.
Yeah, 100%. Speaking of Noah Ainsworth, he's obviously been in the news since the game for his shithousery towards Harry Petty. And I don't mind it. Like, whatever. I like that from
It is the biggest storm in a teacup.
Oh, 100%. And Like,
And Link McCarthy did the same thing.
Yep.
Like a couple of years ago. And it's like, I think the thing is that the general consensus about the Petty and Zorko incident is that it was never cleared up. It was like Melbourne retracted it, but didn't make a statement about it. They were like, no, his mum's not sick. It wasn't a thing about it. Like, it was like, yeah, Zorko probably said something along the lines of like, made a joke that was probably poorly timed.
Yeah.
But all's fair in the game. And it's like, if you're a club and you're like, he said this particular thing, he said he hopes his mum dies. And it's like, well, he didn't say that. He said a couple of other things that maybe alluded to that. But also, she wasn't sick, and we're going to we've had an investigation. The AFL investigated it, and they all found that it was nothing. And then they didn't say anything about it. So everyone still thinks that that's what he said, and that was the context that it was said in. It's like, there's a big difference between players who can sledge or who play the game and keep things on the field. And Petty doesn't keep things on the field. He takes things off and he carries them with him. And he had a shit game and sucked into him because I think he's petty by name, petty by nature, and I don't like him. And I think his type of character is not good for the game.
It's just weird that he's somehow managed to make himself the victim in all of this, and that he's just a good boy, a good boy that's undeserving of the shtick that gets thrown his way. But he gives it out, and not just to Brisbane, he gives it out as much as he cops it. And then I guess the narrative is, well, you can give it but can't take it. Jimmy Bartell.
Yeah, but no one says that. No one says it. I mean, well, Jimmy Bartell probably said it, but
Jimmy Bartell sort of put it quite bluntly on Footy Furnace. He said, "Well, don't go to the circus if you don't want to see the clowns." And he threw up a bunch of vision of Harry Petty dishing it out both physically and verbally as well. So, and Lee Matthews obviously had no issue with it. It's like, well, you're on the footy field. It's a battle of physicality, emotion, and mentally as well. So you've just got to cop it.
Yeah, I find it amazing that that's the sort of thing that gets brought up in a press conference. It gets a banner roll on the AFL app. If it's the other way around, not a chance. And it's regarding the initial incident, Zorko does not need help to be made to look like a dickhead.
Yes,
he doesn't. And the fact that it's sort of you're trying to essentially well, you're not besmirching the pure that is Zorko, but you're adding cow shit to the horse shit that is Zorko. And it's it doesn't really make that much of a difference, but it's this optics on Petty that's the dude's a wanker completely. And he didn't get a touch before the fourth quarter. So good job, dude, because he was just hitting people and roughing people and being oh god. And don't get me started on Harrison Petty. Tell you what. No. You want to see someone else that's petty by nature? It's me.
And Zorko was asked about it after the game as well, and he had to give the PR answer of, oh no, I'll have a chat to him and say that's not how we want to go about it. And then I'm sure as soon as he was off that interview, he's gone over to Noah Answorth and given him a high five.
See, I mean, whilst I understand the idea of giving the PR answer, it's optics, man. Use your brain. You were the worst person to be giving the PR answer, and you should say that. This is where I think footballers should be more honest, and where seeing a couple interviews in the weekend, Charlie Dixon's interview was great after the Port Adelaide game. I did not know that he had that many brain cells to push together, but he does.
Charlie Dixon
should have said. Sorry, go on.
Charlie Dixon seems anytime I hear or see him off the field, he seems like a really good guy.
And then on the field, he looks terrifying.
Yeah, and the way he plays the game, I guess he's just competitive and using his big frame and whatnot, but he just seems like a fuckwit on the field. But to
hear him go, I was completely towed up by Alex Pearce all game.
Yeah.
Refreshing. And that's where Zorko can go, maybe I'm not the best person to answer this question. Because it would be funny. It would be very typical of him. It would add a little bit of humanity to him and not have this weird faux bravado. He's not a leader. He's a senior player, but he's not a leader. So he doesn't need to be having a word to anybody. And just be I'm not the right person to say because I've had my troubles with this sort of thing. So you'll have to ask someone else. And everyone would have been like, ha ha ha, that's funny. Cool.
Maybe they would have been ha ha ha.
Because the thing is, it seems like he's on his high horse about it, and then people that don't know, ugh. More honesty, please.
Yeah, it's a tough one because then more honesty, it leaves you open to getting shouted down. Feel like Jack Ginnivan is being as honest as he thinks he is, but that kid is a fucking germ. And he's just making things worse for himself, going, oh no, Fly told me I had to be humble, but I am humble. It's like, mate, no, you're not. Your whole thing is you're not humble, you just... Yeah.
Yeah, but that's not honesty. That's like cultivating a personality, which is entirely the opposite of what I'm saying. I'm like, understand your environment. Like, if you've been taught to speak, Zorko needs to know, I've got to give a PR answer here because they're asking a loaded question. And they're asking it to me specifically because they know that anything that I say here, if I say, oh, you shouldn't do that, it's going to look like I'm a moron or that sort of thing. There's got to be an element of knowing how to like react to the interviewers and interviewees and like how to actually talk to people in a way that like creates the right story for the club, and B, to kind of cultivate your personality and the club and go like, maybe I'm not the right person to do that. And it would have been funny. I would have found it funny if it was the headline was Dane Zorko asked about Noah Answorth interview, says probably not the guy to talk about it. Like, that's hilarious. That's like anyone's clicking on that.
Yeah, true.
Get me in the media properly.
All right. The twos.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. Didn't they have some sort of game? Went down to North Melbourne by 1 point. How's this for accuracy? A la Adelaide Carlton. North 12 goals 4-76. Beat Brisbane Lions 9 goals 21-75. Now, the takeaways from this one is Brandon Ryan played his first game for the club in the VFL. 3 goals 2. Lovely. Couple of tackles, 6 marks. Brilliant. That's what you want from your sort of key forward in the twos. Your mate Jared Lyons had another blinder, 38 touches, 0 goals 3.
0 goals 3.
Dev Rob, 33.
He lost us the game single-handedly. Lost us the game.
11 clearances, 4 tackles. Dev Rob, 33 touches, 1 goal 2. 1 goal 2. 7 clearances, 5 tackles. Jimmy Tunstall, 28 with 1 goals 1. Sharpie had himself a decent game, as did Jackson Pryor. So very disappointing on that side. On the other hand, Logan Morris, who has been lighting it up the first couple of weeks, relatively quiet this week. Just the 10 touches didn't affect the scoreboard.
Yeah, the old twos.
Now, I must admit, I didn't catch this, so I'm going off numbers. So there's every chance with Darcy playing in the seniors and Brandon Ryan coming back that maybe Logan Morris was playing down back potentially. So I'd have to go back and look at the tape, and I'm sure there's people listening right now that do know the ins and outs of that, so that very well could have been the case. But yeah, 9 goals 21. Yikes.
Yeah, I just saw the post that said, we kick good. And I was like, was that you? No, it was someone else with the same humour as you. So, probably the less said about that, the better. Was there a localised cyclone following us around in the forward 50s from end to end at Arden Street? Who knows?
Now, that does beg the question, obviously, should... at this time of recording, we don't know whether Brisbane will be challenging Charlie Cameron's ban. I hope they will be, because Charlie plays well against Geelong. He's got a history of playing very well against Geelong. There will have to be a forced change should they decide not to challenge it, or should they challenge it and it doesn't come to fruition. You've already flagged the fact that Bailey plays a little bit more forward, and I do agree with that, but we do have to bring someone else into the team.
Yeah, we do. So, we're doing changes?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, I'm probably unpopularly put Dev Rob in and keep Tunstall on the bench, or on the sub bench, back bench.
Yeah.
Whatever. And yeah, that's that. But Yeah, I can't believe that Jordan Dawson got a fine for what is the same thing.
It's crazy, isn't it? I really hope they challenge it.
Yeah, even if you look at the gradings, it's, careless, high contact, and then Dawson's is low impact and Cameron's is medium impact. Both players got up to take their free kick.
Yep.
And the mitigating circumstances here, which there are a few, not loads, but Ollie Hollands is obviously smaller than, or I don't know if it was Ollie Hollands or the other one. They both look the same because they're brothers. Dawson on Hollands, Dawson the bigger man, whereas the other way around, you got Charlie Cameron, who's the smaller man on Jake Lever. So you're looking at there needing to be an element of greater force to take someone down of Jake Lever's stature. Does Lever give it a bit of mayo on the ground? Probably, but I don't like to think that AFL players are putting themselves at risk to try and win free kicks. But if they were, Jake Lever would be quite high on the list of people that may or may not do that. So, I think they should go to tribunal and they should say, hey, look at this one that happened on the exact same weekend.
Yep. No, I agree. I certainly hope that is the case. I hope they do fight it and get it down to a low, and then Charlie's free to play. If not, I might actually, if Bales is going sort of more permanent forward to play that role, I'd probably...
Well, I don't know. That was just what a theory
No,
was.
but
I'm not the coach.
But if that is, if that's what transpires, that we don't challenge or the ban is upheld, I might actually bring Sharpie in to play more that wing role to cover Bailey, who's going to be moving forward. Bailey, Tunstall, Dev Rob, take your pick. Sharpie. I think Sharpie comes in and leave Tunstall as the sub, or vice versa.
There seems to be some sort of mowing event happening outside, so I apologise if that's coming through.
That's fine.
A smoky would be, what about Conor McKenna?
That's true. Yeah, and then...
So there could be a situation... and I was going to say, I hope Noah Answorth does not get dropped because of his crying gesture.
Nah. I don't think
McKenna comes back in.
I don't think he'll get dropped for that. I think it'll just be a case of, well, McKenna's back, thanks Noz. But the other option is if McKenna is right to go, then it's a straight swap McKenna for Chuck Cameron, and then Zorko gets shuffled and plays forward of the ball, or Bailey, and there's just a flow-on effect. Yeah.
Yeah, because Noah Answorth's been playing off the half back line, but he's also almost been doing like a bit of a double Starcevich with the two of them. They both. I tell you what. So one thing I did notice about Noah Answorth is I let slip last week that I played volleyball.
That's right.
I'm not gigantic, so don't worry about that. I'm small, and if anyone has played indoor volleyball, I was a libero, which is basically serve, receive, and defense, like the bitch of the team. So I played that because I was too short to do any of that. But the whole position is based on like you're reading that your team's spike is going to get blocked and where the ball is going to go. So you're always looking at the drop zone. And Noah Answorth does that so well in terms of knowing where the ball's going to like ricochet out to and getting like ground balls. And like he's like a little second ball Hoover. It's amazing. The amount of ones that he like gets off hands and stuff is so impressive. So that just reminded me of that.
Yep.
And for the three people that know that, cool. Have fun with that little bit of morsel of information. So, we obviously we talked about him and his gesticulating, but I think his reading of the ball off hands and stuff is actually really good.
Yeah, I agree. We've always had time for Noah on this show, and I think most Lions supporters do. Like, really want to see him get a good crack at it. It's just his body's let him down so continuously.
His face let him down, seemingly. Like, it seems to me like it was almost an element of like a bit like Charlie Cameron, where like his facial surgery and stuff kind of really hampered his confidence.
Yep.
He gave an interview, I think last week or whatever, where he touched on that sort of thing. So, yeah, changes. I think I just said, Dev Robin, Tunstall stays on the bench, and Bailey to kind of fill that forward half void. But yeah, Sharpie could be a good shout.
Yeah, I mean, and it'll more likely just be McKenna and shuffling, I would say. But who knows? I'm happy with basically anything. Ideally, Charlie fights the ban, gets off, and is free to play. So, big task against Geelong this week at the Gabba. Finally, we got a 8-9 day break, which is something we haven't had in a hot minute. So that'll be good, and to play at home.
Geelong playing on the Sunday as well. So Geelong with a 6-day break.
Yep.
So
looks like
that said, they had the luxury of being able to rest a couple of players, or whether they were enforced or rest. But
yeah,
like where's Dangerfield at? Is he coming back from his hamstring, or is he?
It looks like, I saw a brief headline today. It looks like both Hawkins and Dangerfield will be back to play.
Great.
Yeah.
Cool. Great.
But I mean,
Lovely.
Dangerfield isn't necessarily the threat that he once was. Tom Hawkins still is, just because he's
Well, we don't have the Marcus Adams trap card to play anymore. Who was literally the perfect matchup. And whilst I hope Payne can do it, could be a good little assignment for him, I think.
Well, Jeremy Cameron's obviously the worry, who's been putting together another career best season. He kicked 6 goals yesterday and 25 odd touches. The way he's playing up the ground, and then drifting back into the forward line. So we need to be able to counteract that, because so far no one's even put the time into trying to stop that. So if we can get on top of that, that goes a long way to trying to get a win. And Tom Stewart, you shut those two down, then you're halfway there.
Would you give Froggy the assignment on Jez Cameron?
If he's got the tank to run with him, yeah, maybe.
Because it's the sort of one where in future you'd probably try and pass them on, but it's the sort of thing where it's hard because you're looking at it going, well, Tom Stewart might be a spare down back, and if we set up to have a spare down back as well, then you can sort of do that roll on where you push maybe like Darcy Gardner, and Lester goes with him into the centres, and then Darcy Gardner drops back in, and then whatever. But yeah, I don't know. They probably, given the coaching performance of the last week, they probably have plenty of time to try and figure out what they want to do with it. So
yeah, and I'm sure
I am but a peasant here.
I hope they're not sitting there just going, "Oh no, we won't worry about that." I'm sure they will be. So it's going to be a tough game. Geelong, they're never out of it for too long. Last year, obviously, an aberration where they missed the finals, but they're clearly back in fine form, undefeated so far this year, and it's going to be a tough assignment. So we got the better of them last year, monstered them in the midfield. If we can do that again, I'll be pretty happy.
Yeah, it was one of our absolute defensive masterclasses. Not too dissimilar, actually, to the Melbourne game, really, that we just played, where we sort of, first 3 quarters, it was absolute dominance, and Geelong kind of got a sniff in the last quarter due to some weird push in the back free kick sort of stuff that didn't happen, but let's not go into that. Dangerfield decided he wanted to play. So, yeah, more of the same, I reckon.
Yeah, hopefully. Stengel's back to playing good footy as well, and Brian Myers is obviously putting together a really good season so far as well, that little rat. So,
well, just be careful, because if he does end up coming to the Lions and winning a Brownlow, you have to name your second son Brian. We established that last year, so...
we definitely spoke about it. I don't know if we established anything.
We agreed. It's a verbal contract.
Now, let's go back and have a look at some of the memorable games between Brisbane and Geelong. And there are 2 that obviously come to mind very, very easily, that being the Miracle on Grass and the 2019... was it the last game of the home and away season, or close to the end of the home and away season? The big ride, Link McCarthy in his 50th game, taking the hanger and sealing the game. We go on to win by a point.
The penultimate.
That's right, yeah.
Penultimate game.
Both of those 2 obviously will go down in I guess, Gabba and Brisbane Lions folklore from the 2010s. A couple of prelims where Geelong have wiped us from the park.
Let's not talk about that.
No.
So you've decided to be a fun suck when that's normally my job. So go ahead.
Yeah, well, I've gone to the other game in 2013, Brisbane and Geelong. This was happening round 23, down at Cardinia Park, and this was at a very testy time. It was the last game of the season, last round of the season, and we were a mathematical chance to make finals. Should we beat Geelong, we needed a result to go one way or the other for Carlton and Port Adelaide, and I think North Collingwood. So all those games were sort of going to affect each other, and for some reason we just had all the momentum in the last 5 minutes, and it came down to one Ryan Lester snap that felt he kicked it off the boot all wrong. He didn't get any air on it whatsoever. Paul Chapman touches it through, and we go down by a point. I don't think the other results went our way anyway, but for a brief moment, our finals chances were alive. Not that we were going to do any damage whatsoever, but I do remember that one. And the other one, Bailey, but the Bailey tackle on Blitzarves, where that wasn't paid, that would have handed us the win. So we've actually performed all right down at Cardinia Park without necessarily walking away with the win quite often. Those 2 point losses or whatever like that, just, crazy stuff.
Well, even the one the year later, similar time of the year, I think we lost by maybe 10 points, but there was 10 points. Yeah. We kicked a lot more accurately, I think, in that game the following year. And there were some moments where I think Rayner kicked the belly of the ball, and it sort of would have put us in front with a couple of minutes left. But Cardinia.
Was that
we're not going there this year.
The Harris Andrews hands in the back, Tom Hawkins shoved Harris Andrews right in the back. And did Harris also get done for a descent? He put his arms out very slightly.
That was Jeez. So I think there was that. There was a 3-goal swing where it was Harris, then the push by Hawkins, and then also the Rayner kicking the wrong side of the ball, all in the space of about 5 minutes. It's there's the game, dudes.
I do remember after that as well, after Harris got shoved mightily in the back and the umpire didn't call it, later on in the game, Harris just shoves a bloke in the back, takes the mark, and then stares at the umpire go on, call that. And he didn't, which was very funny.
Oh dear. Yeah. So speaking of fun sucks, I've gone for the 2004 preliminary final.
Oh yeah.
End of an era of the mandatory game at the MCG. So the Lions playing their home preliminary final against Geelong at the MCG in the wet.
How good.
With 1 day's fewer break, leading into a grand final where Jonathan Brown shattered his shin. Obviously we won because we played in the grand final. Some interesting players playing for Geelong at the time. So we've got, obviously Paul Chapman. We've got Charlie Gardner, the infamous name screw up that people have for Darcy Gardner. Or maybe it's just
Dermy. Yeah.
We have Corey Enright, whose most recent attributions saying that Jimmy Webster isn't that kind of a guy. So it's good for him. Scarlett, Cam Mooney, young Gary Ablett, only getting 13 disposals, probably his career lowest at that point in time. Brett Maloney playing for Geelong.
Lovely.
Weird. And then, Jimmy Bartell, we've talked about earlier on. So on the night for us, Nigel Lappin, 30 disposals, obviously, because he was really, really good in that year.
Yeah.
Really good in that year. Your mate Simon Black did pretty well. 4 goals for Daniel Bradshaw. And I remember at about 3/4 time in that game, my dad going, "Oh shit, we're going to win this. Better go get some grand final ticks."
What a great reaction.
So, yeah, he's I think he was kind of going, MCG, probably not going to happen. And then it was a bit got to go to the Gabba, because back then you had to literally go to the Gabba to line up for ticks. So there was no online shenanigans, Ticketek, of being you want tickets? It'll cost you anywhere between $300 and $1,000 sucked in.
Oof.
You know that too well, my friend.
Oh, yes.
But yeah, so there's that one, which then ended up obviously changing things, where no longer were home finals to be played at the MCG for a interstate team. So insane. Beautiful.
Brilliant stuff. Well, another big game at the Gabba this Saturday against the Cats. Hopefully we can all leave the Gabba with a win, finally, for the first time in 2024. It'd be nice, wouldn't it? Until then, that has been the Brisbane Lions Fancast. Back for another week. Any final thoughts this week?
The only final thought I'll give you is Sam Taylor obviously got killed.
Yeah.
Had he protected himself a la Peter Wright, I don't think that would have happened.
Maybe.
But, you've got someone flying across the pack. What was that, a head clash?
I think so, yeah. Yeah, it was pretty grim.
Yeah, I mean, they did. I don't think they showed any replays of it. But, yeah, interesting that Peter Wright gets 4 weeks for protecting himself and stopping shit like that happening. And Sam Taylor ends up in hospital. So, cool stuff. Priorities in order.
Bit of food for thought for your week ahead, I suppose.
Also, if we're just going to touch on it, the Zach Butters, Brad Crouch, kind of similar. I think Brad Crouch is probably a bit more like... They both got the ball, though. That's the thing I don't understand. I would be a hypocrite if I said that I thought they're both suspendable, things. I think the Butters one looks worse because of the speed in which he enters the contest. But last night, David King and Montagna were sort of talking about it. They were disagreeing. And I could see both of them where they were both coming from, where, Montagna's sort of saying, I don't think it's a suspension. And I agree with that. But then I also, God forbid, agreed with David King in that consistency is kind of more important right at this point in time.
Yep.
So they need to figure it out. And whilst it's cynical to say, Zach Butters is in there for a Brownlow, we have seen stuff like that happen before. And that's it. I don't think that Zach Butters will win the Brownlow. So I think probably Errol Goulden will win it. So head to here third.
There you go. The man that never makes predictions gone on on a bold one right there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't make predictions for my own team. I'm more than happy doing it for the other ones because there's no stakes in it.
Fair enough.
Unless, of course, it is how quickly one can eat a steak.
Sure.
You can just end the thing there if you want.